Spring practice is here. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, I'm Jaron, and that's Landon. Landon, first day of spring practice is in the books.
Yes.
What was your first initial thoughts?
First initial thought is I'm glad football is back, even if it is just spring practice. But, Jeff Lebby gave that interview, read through a lot of what he said, a lot of good stuff in there. But I'm going to kind of stay on brand. I've talked a lot about quarterbacks, and he had a quote about Shapen. And I know some people might think I've been a little hard on him, but it's not because of who he is as a player, as a teammate, which Lebby stressed. Right. This is a guy who will go die for you, and he'll inspire you every day. He spends more time in this building than anybody inside this program. That's the expectations we have, and that's what we're going to have to do to get it done. And he'll continue to do that for us. So, that really speaks to the type of person he is as a leader, and that's important to have in the building. Like everything I quarterback. Yeah, that's exactly what you want with your quarterback. You want a guy that you're going to run through a wall for. Yeah. And if that's what he's bringing to the team, even if he's not that elite physical talent, that can mean almost, if not more, to have a guy that your team rallies around.
Right. And that, like you said, that's always a good thing to have, especially if you don't have like that guy yet, that's going to be your star, or that guy out of, is the big 5-star recruit or whatever. If you don't have that, these are the kind of quarterbacks you do need, because he can win you games. He's good enough to win you games. And then you, like you mentioned and Lebby talked about, the leadership aspect is even more important. And that's big, especially when you have a young coach. He can kind of take some of the pressure off, especially with Lebby being the offensive coach.
Yeah.
And being the offensive coordinator and calling the plays and doing all that. That helps a lot too when you have a leader at the quarterback position, and especially someone that's played a lot of football like Shapen has. He can kind of take over that, and so you don't, as a head coach, have to worry about all that while worrying about calling the plays, while worrying about being a head coach.
And it is his second year in the system. He only played, like 4 games last year, didn't get a ton of reps, but he was around the program. He was around this offense, and he was in all the film studies, all of that. So, he has a good grasp of the offense. And staying on the quarterbacks, I wanted to bring up Kamario Taylor, him just saying he's understanding the speed of everything, and he's doing an unbelievable job of working his butt off. And he talking about film and meeting room, and that's something we've talked about. That man is a physical freak. It's just, is he ready to be the quarterback yet? And it doesn't sound like he's going to get a ton of rep this year. When you have that kind of physical ability, he probably gets on the field in certain packages.
Right.
But if he's grinding like this now, next year, that guy, speaking of the star, it could be him.
Yeah, and we talked about Shapen, not having much of a running ability, has a little bit, but not a whole lot. And especially with his injury history, you might not want to put him out there like that. So maybe you do bring him in to run some in a package like you mentioned. My biggest thing is we talked about how, I think this is either last podcast or the one before that, we talked about how you can change your roster so much with the transfer portal nowadays. And Lebby talked about that. He said, I feel like over the last 9 weeks, you talk about over 40 new players on the roster. Our guys have tried like heck to get to know each other. He said today, talking about yesterday, actually, we could get out there and focus on ball. Our energy, our effort, our attitude was really good. From a roster standpoint, where we are today compared to a year ago is completely different. Excited about getting pads on in a few days and getting to work. That completely different is the big part. And the 40 new players is a big part. And if you're a Mississippi State fan, that should make you feel good inside. Like, you just saw a 2-10 football team that beat one FBS opponent.
Right.
Better be completely different than
And it also sounds like, to an extent, the mentality is very different inside the building. They are coming in like, we're going to punch you in the mouth type of attitude. Right. And he specifically mentioned how big the line is now, like the length and how heavy those guys are. And that's very important, especially in the SEC, when you're facing the guy you're lining up from is going to be playing on Sunday in a year or two. That's important to have the length and the size.
Yeah, and you're referring to when he was talking about the defense. He was saying
Yes.
that this year the big difference with the defense is going to be more length, more guys over 300 pounds, which in the SEC, like you mentioned, you have to have those guys. Otherwise, you'll get bullied against the best teams. And we already talked about Mississippi State's schedule. It's going to be a lot of bullies. It's going to be a lot of bullies. So you got to be big. You got to be ready for that. And that's why I think, and I said this in one of the earlier podcasts, that's why you see a big jump in the second year, or you need to see a big jump in the second year, because now you have experience in terms of what a good team looks like, and what's not going to work in the SEC. And so you can build your roster that way. Again, I'm not saying you have to go from 2-10 to 9-3. That's not what I'm saying. Because with that schedule, going 5-7 would be an amazing improvement. Now, Mississippi State fans might not want to hear that. I get that. You want to be a bowl team every single year. But because of how tough the schedule is, you go from 2-10 to 5-7, 6-6. That's a really good turnaround.
Yeah, it is. And they're ready to do it. It's still going to be so tough. It doesn't matter how prepared you are. When you face a gauntlet like this, it's going to be a rough time getting to that point. But they've set themselves up for it. The coaching staff seems to be coming in with the new attitude, or at least a more vocal, we're going to take the fight to people type of attitude. Shapen's getting people ready to run through the wall. And that's kind of that new attitude, scrappy quarterback is kind of what you need to surprise some people sometimes. Yep. And that's kind of what they're shaping up to do. And if they go 9-3, we're going to throw a party on here. I mean,
yeah, right. Hey, I like how you say shaping up to do. Was it on purpose? Were you
just had a dad joke flowing through me for some reason?
Hey, I snagged it. I caught it. But no, you're right. If they were able to have a great season like that, you throw a party and you're excited. But you just, again, and we've talked about this in past episodes, you got to prove that the program is headed in the right direction.
Yes.
You can do that not just by winning games, by playing games closer, by being a competitive team. Stuff like that can prove that it is headed in the right direction. And that's what you need to do in year 2. And then year 3, that's when you got to start seeing the win results.
Yes.
And same with year 4. You got to keep building on that. And that really takes off from there. But year 2 is big about showing you can compete at least.
Yeah, year 2, and you have to establish the culture and your identity. Like, this is what I brought to this team. This is who we are now. This is what we're going to be known for. That's huge, especially with someone like Lebby, who's a first-time head coach. He has to start showing this is who this team is under me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we've given Shapen some love. Well, does Athlon Sports also give that same kind of love? They came out with their SEC quarterback rankings. They're way too early rankings. Well, we're going to talk about that coming up next. Well, ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. I think we've all been there with the food delivery, especially coming out of COVID. But instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. And imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. I just checked the Gametime app, and there are amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. The lowest price guarantee or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It lets you see the seats before you buy, gives you no surprise fees, and a lowest price guarantee. you can book with total confidence. It also takes the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to follow us on X, on Facebook, or like I told you the other day, we still haven't got the Facebook set up, but once we get that up, I'll let you know. Yes, but we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we even posted a TikTok. So
my first TikTok.
Yeah, so we're all over that. So, and then we're also wherever you listen to your podcasts, just the audio version as well.
Yes.
All right, Landon. So Athlon Sports, they released their way too early SEC quarterback rankings, and out of 16 quarterbacks, Shapen comes in at number 14.
Yeah.
The writer says Shapen was off to a promising start, 974 passing yards and 8 touchdowns before a season-ending shoulder injury in Mississippi State's fourth game of 2024. With a full offseason to recover and developing coach Jeff Lebby's high-powered offense for another year, Shapen could put up huge numbers in 25. So it's a lot of positive. Now,
yes,
I'm sure you guys are wanting Bo Perbula from Missouri. I hope I say that right. He hasn't played a game yet.
Nope.
He's or he transferred, from Penn State. Hasn't played a game at Missouri. He's number 15, and Zach Calzada. He was at A&M, was at Auburn. He's last at 16. But
how I learned who Zach Calzada was.
Yeah, right. And that's by Stephen Layson over at Athlon Sports. But he at least has some positives to say. It's just the ranking isn't super high.
Which, like when you first read it, you're like, okay, he's 14th, because normally you look at the SEC quarterbacks and it is just, it's a murderer's row. You're looking at guys who are going to be in the top 10 of the next 3 drafts are the people who are in there. And I was like, is this one of the weakest years for quarterbacks?
Right.
In the SEC in a long time. Honestly, I'd put Nussmeier 1 just because, again, Arch hadn't played. I feel like we're jumping.
I see an Arch at 1 when he hadn't played, really. I wouldn't go that far.
But I understand why Shapen's where he is. You factor in the injury history. He hasn't had sustained success. But honestly, outside of Nussmeier and to an extent Nico at Tennessee, I'm still not going to try to pronounce his last name.
I am a Lieva.
There you go. But outside of those two, you can pretty much make an argument for everyone from 4 through 16.
Yeah, I think John Mateer should be a little higher for the great year he had, and he was the number 1 transfer quarterback. But Diego Pavia at 5, I thought, again, I get all the hype, and I put him at 5.
Story, but
he shouldn't be over Nico. He shouldn't be over John Mateer, really.
Taylor Green in the top 10 was.
Yeah, and he showed flashes. And Marcel Reed at 9. Really, other than the LSU game
where he ran.
Yeah, where he just ran, basically. He threw 2 passes. Now, one of them was a 60-yard touchdown. Austin Simmons, he looked impressive on that one drive against Georgia before Jackson Dart came back in, but that's high.
Stockton didn't show me anything in the playoff.
No. And if you watch Paul Feinbaum show, he shreds Gunnar Stockton. So
it's a great quarterback name, but I don't know if
right. And then Ty Simpson right ahead of him, again, hadn't played, and he's predicting Ty Simpson, Alabama, to hold off Keelan Russell. If it was Keelan Russell at 13 or something, I would understand it because he's a big 5-star, huge prospect. Ty Simpson was there last year. Obviously, Jalen Milroe was there, so he was your starter. But what has he shown that puts him over Blake Shapen? So now we're defending Shapen,
Hey, we never said he was bad. We just
right, and we're proving it right now by showing who. I would probably put him around 11 or 12.
Yeah, he should be in that kind of 8 to 12 range. It's just kind of he's in that group where it's when you rank quarterbacks in any league, college or pro, any conference, there's always the top 2 or 3, and everything after that almost becomes who you prefer, what type of quarterback you like more. And he kind of fits into that realm where he's a mid-tier quarterback. And if you happen to like his game more than someone else, which I'll take a quarterback that can throw over a quarterback that can just run every day. So, I mean, that's why I would have him higher on this list.
Well, and another one here, I love Jackson Arnold, but Jackson Arnold didn't have a better year than Shapen did last year, even though Shapen was limited. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a better year, and he's ranked higher than Shapen. Now, it's a lot of that off potential, and I think if he would have been at Mississippi State, which, that could have happened, I think he would have been the starter over Shapen, but that's all off potential. That's not off of what he's done. So if you're going off what he's done, he should not be higher than Shapen. He hadn't done more than Shapen.
He carries that 5-star ranking, and 5 stars follow you everywhere. It's like when you're in the NFL. If you're a first-round pick, you're a first-round pick forever. But when you're a 5-star, you're a 5-star forever. It doesn't matter what you do. Some team is still going to talk themselves. Some team, anyone, writer, fan, he has this potential. We're going to be the people that unlock that for him.
Right. And I will say that Auburn's offense and the talent around him is perfect for his skill set.
Yes.
So they might unlock it. But right now, if you're going off what he's done, he's not done more than Shapen. He just hasn't.
No, he hasn't. And same thing. And I know I mentioned earlier, Taylor Green also not done more than Shapen. I mean, sure, his flashes look amazing, but it's 2 or 3 throws a game where you're like,
or a couple runs.
Great.
Right.
I'm throwing out runs. Like, I don't care. If your quarterback can run, that's awesome. But that's not, if I'm ranking a quarterback, I mean,
yeah.
If you run like Lamar Jackson, I'll give you points for it. But until you're doing that, I'm not.
What do you think is a good season for Shapen, like numbers wise? I'm thinking around, if you told me he threw for anywhere from 2,800 to 3,200 yards and like 24 touchdowns and 10 picks or something, and completed 65% of his passes, I think that's a really good season for him.
Yeah, I'm not good with picking total yardage early. I always shoot way too high or way too low. But I would say somewhere around that 65 to 70% completion, between 20 and 30 touchdowns, and keep the interceptions at 10 or lower. That's what you're looking for, because that means he's controlling the game. He's not turning the ball over, and he's giving you a chance to win.
And that's kind of on par. I'm looking at his stats with his best season at Baylor. His second season, he played 63% of his passes, 2,790 yards, 18 touchdowns, 10 picks. So it's right around what I just.
That was a very run-heavy offense too.
Yes, it was. And then through 9 games last year, through 4 games last year, he threw for 974 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick, 68% completion percentage, 68.5. And his yards per game were higher than that year that he threw for 2,790. So he's probably on track. Let's see, that'd be 2 touchdowns a game. That'd be about 24 touchdowns for the season. Yeah, I mean, he's on track for the season I just laid out. Last year he was, before he went and got hurt. And so if he can do that season, I think he'll have a big year.
He'll have a good year.
State will have a big year too.
Yes. Yeah, he would have a good year. That would look good for him. Then also, I mean, that would be good for Lebby. He kind of has, if he has that year, he kind of has proof of concept that my offense works.
Right.
That's his, this can work. Let me keep going.
Yeah. And again, my judgment for a good year is just showing improvement. It doesn't have to necessarily be in wins. Obviously, you want to win more than 2 games.
You got to win 3 or 4.
Yeah. Right. All right, well, coming up next, we got to talk about some March Madness. Dick Vitale, ESPN legend. He has made his tournament prediction. His bracket is out. Does he have Mississippi State moving on? Let's talk about it coming up next.
Daylight savings snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine does mean more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching that NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. And I know I need it about 3 o'clock every afternoon. I'm done for the day, but a little 5-Hour Energy gets me through the rest of it. Basketball Madness, I've been staying up late watching all the tournament action, or I will in a couple days, and 5-Hour Energy helps keep me up the next day. Extra daylight and extra activities with longer days. I love getting outside for a hot hike or run, walking my dog, and Tropical Burst is my go-to for a quick boost. On-the-go convenience, whether I'm at a game or traveling, 5-Hour Energy is easy to grab and keeps me feeling refreshed. Now head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12 or 24 pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, one last time, follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, follow us on TikTok, Instagram. We're all over the places. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about us. But, Landon, we got to talk about it. Right before the opening game for Mississippi State, they take on the Baylor Bears. That will be on Friday. Mm-hmm. Dick Vitale has put out his bracket for the whole tournament. And so this is how he has Mississippi State going. He has Mississippi State beating Baylor. He said the Bulldogs scrapped their way to a win. He then has them losing to Duke, but he says a huge alley-oop dunk with less than 5 minutes on the clock is going to bring the house down. Mississippi State won't be able to answer. So it kind of sounds like he's got them at least in the ball game against Duke, and then just ultimately they can't overcome. Duke becomes a little too much late.
Yeah, that sounds like some of those games they're making they're down by like 10 to 12, went on an 8-0 run, making the comeback, and then Duke does that and just kind of deflates the building, which, I mean, you don't want to say that it's a good loss, but if that happened, that's kind of it's hard to have a better loss, I guess, because, I mean, at least you're in it, and it's not a heartbreaking buzzer beater, so...
Right. And we talked about that before. Like, beat Baylor, that would be a really good start, obviously, and a really good season for you if you just beat Baylor. Duke, just don't get blown out. You know, obviously, if you win it, that's awesome. Like, now make a run. Like, now get after it. But if you lose to Duke and it's like that game where it's kind of back and forth, maybe you're down the whole game, but you're never down more than 6 or 8, and you're just kind of in it, and then that alley-oop dunk happens with 2 minutes left to put Duke up 10, and it just looks like it's kind of over. If you have a game like that, I think the fan base would be very happy about that.
Yeah,
they should.
They should. And I was just kind of looking just for fun who they might match up with if they do beat Duke.
Yeah.
It doesn't really get easier. You're looking at most likely, if there's no big upsets, Oregon or Arizona, who's you're probably going to be facing at that point. And that the road does not get easier.
I think Arizona could be a matchup problem, but I like the Oregon matchup. I think in my bracket I have Oregon losing. Who are they playing in the first round? Does it say?
Liberty.
I think I do have Liberty beating them in one. But yeah, but you could really make a run if you can get past Duke. I mean, obviously anything is on the table. You know, you can really make a run there. But
confidence, you're going to be rolling at that point.
Right. And like I said, it's just I can't stress it. I feel like I talk about it so much on the podcast. I can't stress enough. Get the Baylor win. Like, you need to win that because you've had a really good season. And the one thing that could just ruin that is losing to Baylor. Even though Baylor's not a bad loss. It's not like you're this big, you're a 3 seed playing a 14. It's not like anything like that. It's just when you have these seasons where you are progressing, where they've made 3 straight tournament appearances, you need to start seeing that progress in the tournament.
Yes, you need to get some wins in the tournament. And we've talked about how Duke's that team that always gets upset every year, it seems like. And I filled out 2 brackets, and in one of them I picked Mississippi State to upset Duke. I was like, I'm going to do it. I have to do it. It's going to happen to Duke at some point. And
And like you mentioned, they do get upset quite often, it feels like, but it does, and I will, to Duke's credit, feel like that they feel a little different.
They do.
Year. But they still, 5 of their top 6 scorers are freshmen. I mean, that is a very young team. You get them rattled and you get them in a close game like Dick Vitale mentions, all hands are off. Like, who knows what happens at that point?
Especially if you're a team full of dogs and you're just hounding them the whole game. And I'm doubling down on some punch.
Yeah, I was gonna say I like that dog reference.
And you're just like hounding them, turning the ball over just in their face. And when you foul them, hard fouls,
right?
Yeah, I mean, that might just shake, when the lights are brightest, they might not be able to handle it no matter who they are in that situation.
Right.
It's a tight
no,
game.
we're not saying dirty fouls.
No,
we're saying no easy buckets.
Yes.
You let them know that you're there.
Clean, hard foul.
Yes.
Not a cheap foul.
Right. and kind of like Landon mentioned, I think that's the way to beat Duke, especially it's been the way to beat them in the past. And I think that's definitely the way to beat them even this year is you take the fight to them.
Yes.
You have to be physical with them, and hopefully the refs aren't calling it tight, which we've seen in the NCAA tournament, that kind of wavers. Some games it's really tight, some games it's not. Like I remember, I think it was Houston and A&M last year, both two very physical teams.
Yes.
That was the tightest whistle I've ever heard. We're like,
I think I quit watching the game
out.
Sick of the whistles.
Right. It was like a 3 overtime game. It was like a great game, but like 8 people fouled out because the whistle was so tight, and it was ridiculous.
Can't have that happening, but if you can play like that good, just physical game, wear them down, and you stay in it, it's anyone's game at that point. And especially if Flag is not at 100%, which I would be shocked if he is. I mean, he's probably going to play, but he's not going to be at 100%. If he is, that man is a superhuman.
It's kind of actually, I heard this. I think it was yesterday, and I can't remember who the player was, but it was Udonis Haslem, and he was talking about Jalen Brunson, who also had a bad ankle injury similar to Flag, and he said, as a player, you never become 100% during that year when you have an ankle injury like that. So Flag's not going to be 100%, that's for sure. Now, his 90% is still pretty dang good. His
90% of basketball players.
Yeah. But if you get the game close, now it becomes gut check time for these young guys. And you got to see them overcome the pressure. Now, they did a great job in the ACC tournament without Cooper Flag. They had to come back versus Georgia Tech. They had North Carolina. They had Louisville. Like, they had these tough games, and they overcame it. So that's why I said maybe they're different than what we've seen in the past. But, yeah, you have to make them clinch a little bit.
And, the pressure's on them. They're the one seed in this region. They're the team with all the 5 stars. They're the team with everything to lose. You make it close and you play like you have nothing to lose.
Right.
You might have everything to win.
Yeah, right. And it sounds like we're overlooking Baylor. We're not. Baylor is a great program, has been for years.
We're going to talk more about them. This is more just.
Yes, this was more going off what Dick Vitale talked about and had them moving on. Definitely on Friday's podcast, you'll want to listen to that because that'll be before the game starts. We're going to break down the men and the women because the women play this weekend as well. So we'll talk about both of those in depth about the first opponent. We won't be talking about Duke in that one. It'll be Baylor.
And we might talk about Duke a little bit in that one.
Yeah. But anyways, well, thank you for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here, so be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Again, I'm Jaron. Check out my work on Athlon Sports. I cover college football, college basketball, NBA. I'm writing a lot of college basketball right now. Check out Landon. Follow us on Twitter. We'll be tweeting out stuff, especially when the tournament games start kicking off for Mississippi State. So check on that. Until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.